All right. So the last thing that will show up on your test on Thursday / this weekend is how do we write functions in slope-intercept form. So, as always, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. M represents the slope. M equals the slope. B equals the y-intercept. Y-intercept is where the graph starts. The y-intercept is where the graph starts. Davion, we're in the midst of taking notes. Get your thinking on out, notebook paper, whatnot. Start taking notes. So, today we're going to focus on writing the actual function. We're going to write the actual function. So up until now, you've been given the equation and you had to graph it. Sometimes you had to rewrite it, but primarily you were graphing it. Now, we are going to write the function. So there are two situations in which we can write the function. Either A, I give you the slope, you're given the slope and the y-intercept, or you're given a graph in which you can identify the slope and the y-intercept. So we're going to practice doing it these two types of ways, and then we'll practice it using some real-world examples and using a table. So, first three examples are on the board. Let's go ahead and get started. So, writing the function is actually pretty simple. So, example 1. The function has a slope of 2/3 and a y-intercept of 8. So, it's literally 2 steps. Step 1, plug the slope and the y-intercept into the slope-intercept formula. So the slope-intercept formula is y equals mx plus b. The slope is 2/3, so that's your m value. The y-intercept is 8. That's your b value. Step 1, plug it in. Step 2, that's it. There's your answer. Problem's over. Congratulations, you just wrote the equation. So that problem takes probably, for some of you, probably like 10, 15 seconds after you read the problem. So, any questions on example 1? I already know some of y'all are thinking it can't be that easy, but you'll start out easy before you get to harder stuff. Baby steps. Any questions before we continue? Let's see. So, Mir said no, so she's good to go. She good to go? Then I'm good to go. So example 2. The equation of the line passes through 0, comma, -5, and has a slope of -3/2. So example 2 is a little bit different than example 1. You have a point, and you have the slope. So we're still using y equals mx plus b. The slope part is easy. They told you that the slope is -3/2. What letter represents the slope? The m or the b? It's m. So we know what's going in for m. -3/2. So 0, comma, -5. So 0, -5 means that the y-intercept is equal to -5. So that's just another way of writing the y-intercept. But Morgan, right now you should be taking your notes, because if I end up saying at 12:25, submit your notes, and you don't have your notes copied, guess who's in trouble? Guess who's about to scramble? Like I said, folks, if you stay ready, you never have to get ready. Always assume you're going to turn in your notes unless I tell you otherwise. So 0, comma, -5 means that the y-intercept is -5. So we plug in -5. That's it. Probably good. Any questions? Examples 1 and 2. Start scrolling up. So we're going to do one more straight example before we work with 2 graphs. So you should have examples 1 and 2 by now. Let's do example 3. So example 3, the equation passes through the points 5, comma, -3 and 0, comma, 6. So I'm going to give you a hint. 0, comma, 6 is just like what we did in example number 2. So if you have 0, comma, 6, so what is 6 equal to? Is that the slope or the y-intercept? That's the y-intercept. So now we know y equals mx plus b. So y equals something plus 6. What are we missing? We're missing the slope. So now we got to find the slope. And if you add 2 points, we can find the slope. So remember, those of you who are sitting all quiet in the cut, if you don't understand something, you want to make sure you ask, because this is going to show up on your test on Thursday. It's going to show up on your test this weekend. I can't help you over the weekend. And I can't help you on Thursday. You're like, oh man, it's you and your notes. So we got to find the slope. We got a formula for that. So we plug in the formula. X1, Y1, X2, Y2. So, what should the top part of the formula look like? Excellent job. 6 minus -3, and the bottom part is 0 minus 5. Let's work it out. 6 minus -3 is what? CNC 9, thank you, Mir. What's 0 minus 5? Make it hard now. I know some of y'all got calculators. 0 minus 5 gives you what? -5. So there's your slope. So your slope is 9 over -5. Here's your equation. Any questions on example 3? So, let me leave these 3 up here for people who need to finish copying. You got 60 seconds to do that. While I'm taking care of that, example 1, you were given, so the slope and the y-intercept were given to you. For example 2, the slope was given. Y-intercept you had to figure out. And for example 3, the y-intercept you had to figure out. And you had to find the slope. So it got a little harder as you went along. It got a little harder as you went along. So now let's do it for a graph. Now let's do it for graphs. So, example 4. Examples 4 and 5, we have graphs. So for a graph, if we have a graph, what do we do to get the slope if we have a graph? It's 2 words, an R at the top and an R at the bottom. Rise over run. Ms. Scott, you are awesome. Rise over run. So, let's get the slope. Start from our lowest point. How many spaces do we have to go up? That would be 5. Thank you, Mr. Taylor and Ms. Bassey. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, how many spaces do we have to go over? That would be 4. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. So, that means our slope is 5 over. Since we went to the left, is that positive or negative? That's negative. That's negative. Remember, if you go up, that's positive. If you go down, that's negative. If you go to the right, that's positive. If you go to the left, that's negative. So your slope is 5 over negative 4. There's your slope. So we know one part of the answer. Now we need the y-intercept. Here's how we get the y-intercept. Go to the y-axis, and we identify the point on the y-axis. So there's the y-intercept. What number is that? Graph, you get the y-intercept. So that's 5 over negative 4x minus 1. That's it. Problem's over. You wrote the equation. Any questions before we do example 5? So again, for those people who printed out the notes, you don't have to worry about the graph because it's already printed on it. If you didn't print out the notes, I'm not worried for this assignment that you didn't print out, that you don't do the graph, but that means you should have everything else. I mean, you should probably draw the graph out. That way you have something to reference. Huh? It could be a fraction. Y-intercept could be a fraction. You don't get them that often, but they could be a fraction. Well, see, ladies and gentlemen, that's how easy it is to ask a question. If you know you have a problem and you don't ask the question, don't be sorry. Let's do one more example. So example 5. What didn't they give you in example 5? What was an example 4 that they didn't give you in example 5? The points. Thank you, Carlina. Thank you, Luke. Alyssa, you don't have to highlight everything. I just highlighted it for those people who didn't print it out. So if you printed out your notes, then you're good. If you didn't print out your notes, then the highlighted stuff is what you should have in your notes. So Carlina and Luke said that we're missing points. So since we're missing points, you have to put points onto the graph yourself. So look at the graph and look for places where the blue line meets up with the graph. So it meets up right there. and it meets up nicely right there. You want 2 points where the line meets up with the graph. 2 nice and neat points. You want nice and neat points so that you can do the y-intercept. So, Luke, you put 1, 2, 3, -4, -2. That's right. So it should be -4, -2, and 0, 3. Remember, the x value goes first. All right, so let's do the slope. So for the slope, how many spaces do I have to go up? We got 5. Thank you, Mir and Luke. And how many spaces am I going over? 4. Thank you, Luke. So your slope is +5 over +4. Remember, if you go to the right, so up is positive, and to the right is positive. So it's y equals mx plus b. So y equals 5 over 4 x. So, y-intercept. The y-intercept is whatever point is on the y-axis. So, what number is that on the y-axis? That is 3. 1, 2, 3. All you gotta do is count up. So the y-intercept is 3. 5 over 4x plus 3. Problem's over. Any questions, examples 4 or 5? All right, we're going to take. All right. So now let's actually do this in some real life situations. So as you can see in these examples, I brought Tiana and Clyde into the problem. So when you are working with a real life situation, we don't call it slope and y-intercept. Rather, the slope is called the rate of change or the cost per unit. So for example, if Daniel works a job and he gets paid $15 an hour, 15 is the slope. Because that's how much he gets paid per hour. The y-intercept is what you started with, or your starting position, or your fixed cost. So if Jovan has $500 in his bank account, then his y-intercept is $500, because that's what he started with. So if you're given a word problem, you have to interpret what it means. Y-intercept is what you're starting with. The slope is what's changing. So we're going to first start with a table. So we're going to first start with a table. So for the table, you have 0, 20, 3, 8, 6, -4, 10, negative 20. So we're writing the function. So we're still writing it as y equals mx plus b. So to find the y-intercept, look at where x is equal to 0. So when x is equal to 0, what's y equal to? What's underneath it? 20. So when x equals 0, y is equal to 20. So that means your y-intercept is 20. So one part of it's finished. For your x, now to get your slope, pick 2 points and find it. So we're going to pick 2 points and find the slope. So 0 and 20, and 3 and 8. I just picked the first 2 points. So you might be thinking, Mr. Lowe, how did you know to pick those 2? You can pick whichever ones you want. Pick 2 of whatever one you want. So 0, 20 is 1 point. 3, 8 is another point. 6, negative 4 is another point. 10, negative 20 is another point. Pick whichever ones you want. But now we find the slope. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Label your points again. So at the top of the fraction, you have 8 minus 20. The bottom of the fraction, 3 minus 0. Anyone have any questions so far? Let's work it out then. What's 8 minus 20? Well, great job. Sydney and Lola. Sydney and Cyrus. 3 minus 0 is 3. So negative 12 divided by 3 is what? What kind of 4? He was right, you just forgot negative. So your slope is negative 4. So your answer is y equals negative 4x plus 20. Jesse, SEO, and Melissa, good job. So again, it's not hard. You just got to do a little work. Not hard, just got to do a little work. Any questions on example 6? right, scroll up just a little bit. So example 7. Ryan, Tiana's cousin, works for a rideshare company. He makes $27 for each ride he gives. Anybody know someone that works for Uber or Lyft or anything along those lines? Who knows? You might have someone in your family who does that. I know my mom and my sister does it. So, he makes $27 for each ride he gives. Write a linear function that represents how much Ryan earns based on how many rides he gives. So we have y equals mx plus b. So, based on the problem, how much does he get each time he gives a ride? $27. So that means m is 27. B is the y-intercept, what he started with. So, when he leaves the house, how much does he start with? 0, because he didn't do no work. So $0. So it's 0, didn't start working. Didn't start yet. So his equation is y equals 27x plus 0. Or you can just write it as y equals 27x. Any questions on part A? Any questions on part A? All right, to part B. How much did Ryan earn if he completed 8 rides in a given night? So if he gave 8 rides to people, how are we going to find out how much he made? Multiply. So we have y equals 27x. So that means that x is equal to 8. 27 times 8, which is 216. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. $216 is how much he made that night. $216, how much he made that night. Any questions on example 7? So now you can ask your people how much you're trying to make tonight when they go out to drive for Uber or Lyft or whatever the case may be. Now you know how they calculate. Now you know how they calculate. Trouble though. You said something, Tiana? You good? All right. Last one. Last example. Suppose that Clyde's mom bought him a car that he gets to have when he gets his license. The car's value is $8,400. It loses $480 in value per month. Clyde, you trying to drive? Anybody in here trying to drive? Okay. Let's see. Carlina definitely said me. I'm definitely trying to drive. Okay. So, car value is $8,400. It loses $480 per month. So, if you're losing money, is that positive or negative? Negative. So, you're losing $480 per month. So, losing 480 means that your slope is negative 480. Your slope is negative 480 because it's losing $480. So $8,400 is the car's value. So $8,400 is the starting amount of the car. So that means that's your y-intercept. Any questions on how we put that together? So now, oh yes, go ahead. Go ahead. Because it's telling you that you're losing money. See that part? So if you're losing money, that's negative. If you were gaining money, that would be positive. So, good question. So now, if we're writing the equation, write the function in slope-intercept form. So that's y equals mx plus b. So y equals negative 480 x plus 8,400. There's your equation. Any questions so far? If you have any questions, if you have a question, be like Carlina. Ask. So part B. How much is Clyde's car worth after 2 months? So they told you in the problem that X represents months. So what are we going to do with this 2 now that we have this equation? So X equals the number of months. What are we going to do with that 2? What do you think we're going to do with that 2? And plug it in. So y equals negative 480 times 2 plus 8,400. So negative 480 times 2 is negative 960 plus 8,400. So how much is Clyde's car? After 2 months, how much is Clyde's car? You have some calculators going around here. And I see from Cyrus, we got $7,440. Excellent. So after 2 months, his car is worth $7,400 and a little bit of change. That is how cars work. The more you drive it, the less value it has. So X is the number of months, Y is the new value of the car. Any questions before we do part C? Any questions before we do part C? All right, part C. After how many months will the car be worth half of its value? After how many months will the car be worth half of its value? So this time we want to know what is X going to be in order for it to be half of its value. So how much was the car when he first got it? How much did they say the car was when he first got it? That's $8,400. Yep. All right, thank you, KBR and Cyrus in here. So it's $8,400 when he got it. After how many months will the car be worth half of its value? So months is X. So that means we don't know what X is going to equal to. Y, so half of its value. What's half of 8,400? It's 4,200. Cyrus is on the roll today. I'm appreciative of that. So that means Y is equal to 4,200. So we're going to take our formula, Y equals negative 480, X plus 8,400, and plug in 4,200. So I see Luke said 9 months, Kavion said 9 months. So we're going to check to see how close they are. Because we don't want to estimate, we want to get it right. So here's the equation we have to solve. So if we have to solve that equation, what do we do first? gotta get x by itself. So what do we do first? Take 400 on both sides. So that's negative 4,200 equals negative 480 x. Then what do we do? Divide by, so here says divide. So what number are we dividing by? Find out. So that means x is equal to 8.75 ohms. So Luke, I hope you wrote it down because you're gonna have to take a picture of it so I can see how you did it. But you also need to learn how to solve an equation and get it. Because what we don't do in this class, we don't do guess and check. We don't do guess and check up in here. Because when we go to college, they don't want to see guess and check. They want to see, can you algebraically figure it out? But if you get it a different way, take a picture of it, email it to me, send it to me. I'll gladly look at it. Questions on part C? All right.